committee, for example, the same as you did before.
Yeah, and we can do that anytime. I'd wait a little bit, but we can do that anytime and then just say, this committee's gonna.
I'd recommend doing it right away because it would help folks. It would help folks to know that it is on the desk. It is on the priority list.
We will put this on
It's not
the
languishing.
meeting agenda for the next month.
Yeah,
to
I think
really
Talk about it.
thrash out. how-
I'd like you to come back like you've done in the past with kind of a basic outline and a charge so that everyone can review it, ask their question, because I think we do good work when we look at stuff together. So we would have that so that people can see that activity if they're interested. And then it still takes a while to give people time to submit their intent. And then we sit down typically together and we do our best to pick a diverse committee, and that takes a bit of time as well. By the time we do all that, we're looking at starting. Because it's headed into the end of March, kids. So is everybody comfortable with that piece of town meeting? Is there anything else we have under the review of town meeting? Any other town meeting items from the folks online? I think I'll make my final contribution, I guess. What was really funny to have everybody put in their community service announcement. If we could somehow maybe help folks understand that the moderator will take those submissions in writing, because I don't think it's been an ongoing joke over the years, right? Because the corned beef and cabbage supper gets announced like 100, it's been announced like 100 times. I think we did 2 or 3 times this year. That is fine. That's the moderator's purview, but maybe if we help organizations understand that if they have something they want to announce, because that weekend is always busy, if they could submit those in writing. And that would give Lindsay it would be a little bit less of a scramble. I mean, it was a great point of levity. I don't want to
I was
detract.
gonna say the levity that it provided
Yeah.
might have almost been worth it.
I mean, it was a great
We
point
needed to
of
laugh for a
levity, and you
second.
can't stop someone once they're at the microphone, but
Right.
I think also not everybody knows you could submit something in writing.
Right.
Like I wrote to her in advance and asked, so, anytime we can educate people, if it works, I wouldn't suggest punishing them or getting upset, but I would suggest we maybe tell people they can help themselves.
That's mandatory.
Okay, so we are on to board priorities and goals.
So this was, I'm gonna say a little bit loose, but, I have a little bit I want to talk about some of the strategic planning as we get near the end, but I wanted to really just open it up for the select board to talk about things that they might want to see get done this year, or things that we should start working on or thinking about.
And before we kick this conversation off, I just want to remind folks that there's a difference between a goal, a priority, and a project, right? So shorter term things that have a deadline or a project, goals are an overarching goal. Say you want to keep Enfield in the top 10 safest towns in New Hampshire. I'm just throwing a random one out, right? And then you work towards those goals. Listen, hey, we're on the 7 list, so that's 7. But I'm saying, so things that have a deadline or a timeline, like a project, are outside of that, but that doesn't mean you can't give it a priority rating. So with that in mind, as we have this conversation, I'd ask that you define whether you feel like it's a goal or a priority. Is that fair?
Yeah, I just kind of want to get.
Yeah, and then,
From each of the.
okay, let's throw it at the-
of What they'd like to be.
So also, I think we should bring Allison, Tracy. We had, the 3 of us had previously had some discussions around this earlier in the year. And if you guys are comfortable, I'll just read the 4 that we had sort of written down. And obviously, we're a new board, so we don't have to stick to what we had written before. But as sort of big bullet points, communicate big bullet points and activity to keep stakeholders updated on the status of current capital projects. 2, develop town strategy and goals together with the select board, which is part of what we're doing now. Using the master plan to drive and develop policy across town departments and to further refine the budget process within town business units. Those were 4 big items that we had previously
There's a
discussed.
budget one more time.
Further refine the budget process within town business units,
Within town business.
so like within departments.
Oh, okay.
Exactly how the, budget estimation and build up and how that process works.
Mhm.
I should have used the word department. You're right. This is why we work together.
So how does DPW build up their budget for the year?
Mhm. Last year, he inherited a budget that we worked together and we're fortunate enough to have Jack help us with. This year, he had an opportunity to go through the full process, and once everybody knows in an organization, once you go through the full process, once you find things that you'd like to refine. And so I think that's a mutually agreed upon goal. Would you say that's fair?
What was your third one again?
That was, using the master plan to drive and develop policy across town departments.
I'll talk about that a little more on the strategic.
I'm gonna ask you what the second one was again.
The second one was just, developing town strategy and goals together with the select board. We've previously done, like with Brian, we did some, real visioning activities and those kind of got set aside. And now with the new town manager and new staff and, long-term strategic thinking is really what.
We've basically dumped all of our goals and planning aside for stay alive during COVID.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make light of it. It
Yeah.
really was. That was our priority and everything went to that end. We kept operations running it, but it was like stay alive, don't drown. And that's really not a great way to run an organization, but I think a lot of organizations went to that. We did our constant pivots, but now we're back to a point where we should be able to do some strategy and goals. And I think that communication piece is more to speak to the discussion we had was that we have a lot of projects going on and people often say, well, I don't know so how do we just give them some, when we're talking big bullet points, like a few small words about where we are, because when people get too much content, they don't absorb it. And that's not a criticism, it's just.
Like one example, right, we're doing a big water sewer project on Maple Street. The engineering for that project was done last year. That's something that is not visible to anyone who's just observing. Now, if you attend a bunch of meetings, you hear about it, but some way of communicating to people that this is the stage we're in, this is, what's happening now. And with so many projects going on, I would like to see some sort of a dashboard type of thing of, here's where we are in the process,
On the town site.
Yeah. Nothing too complicated. And then if people want more information, they can go read all the meeting minutes.
And
Mhm.
that's
Because the information's there, but somehow extracting like the,
Mhm.
the 3 key
the
points.
top level.
Yeah,
And since the budget did pass, we will be refining our website or getting a new website, which
We'll
will,
be doing a website upgrade. And we can definitely talk about that during that talk.
At the top of my list of projects, as opposed to perhaps its definition as a goal, is communications to the public. One of the things that I would like to see with the new website improvement that we've put into the budget, and we reviewed that at the budget committee, is that we do an improved job of having the minutes posted to the town website. We're behind the RSA within the state, which requires the minutes from any public meeting to be made available within 5 working days. That part is clear. So you have 7 days physically to create and to prepare the minutes. I know of no reason why we can't get those minutes to the website as opposed to someone having to go in and say, may I please see the minutes from 5 or 7 days ago? I'd like to see it on the websites and posted so that people can review the minutes. And I believe this helps as the baby step to Eric's concerns about getting capital project information out there, because we're behind on many of our committee minutes from many of our committees. So that's a number one project / priority. By definition, I'm not sure which it is, to be perfectly honest.
So I do have a question with that. If you read Emily's minutes, they're extremely detailed. The motions, all the stuff that goes along with what is statutorily required is done pretty much the night the meeting's done.
Mhm.
She does spend a lot of time re-listening and trying to get a lot of that detail in there. If we're trying to post these within 5 days, that detail's gonna go away some. So I wanted the select board to have some discussion on where their priorities would be and what they would rather see.
So that the 5 days is not sufficient for her to be able to prepare the minutes properly?
Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, and I guess defining the word properly is where we're at. Statutorily, the amount of detail that she goes into is not required.
Like statutorily, you can do this and have a couple motions and like scan it, right? I mean, there's
So we had a little bit of talk about that, and she can still put some information in there about what the general talk was about, but the level of detail she goes into, sometimes she would be able to meet that deadline, sometimes she would not.
I don't think it's worth trying to push, I don't know.
Well, statutorily, we don't have a choice. The
No,
minutes have to be out there within 5 working
no,
days.
statutorily, we have no legal obligation to put them on the website.
No, we don't. That's what I'm
That's what I'm saying.
suggesting. I agree. We don't have an obligation to put it on the website, but in this day and age, I don't think we have a good excuse not to be perfectly.
I think that we have to give some grace to humans who have jobs and families and other commitments. So, you know, I know personally, like, if you wanted me to write minutes, right, which I don't, I just send them to Elisa with notes and she magically makes them happen. But that doesn't work for everything in town. And so if we have somebody who's got family trainings, multiple meetings, I think that's not a reasonable expectation when you are constantly on the go. You know, I don't want people up in the middle of the night and killing themselves for over minutes. And then it speaks to the question, do we start, you know, entering into another position? Because we don't, these are people who are they're contractors, are they, or?
Well, some,
That's what
Emily
some-
does it as
Emily's
part of her.
a job.
in the town.
Because she happens to also. So we have other jobs in this town that we have Emily doing.
One of the advantages to the software upgrade, if I understand it correctly, is that the committees are going to be able to post their own minutes directly.
I'm not
The
sure we,
committees might not be
I
able
don't
to,
think you
but-
want them to.
Why wouldn't they be able to do it?
Some people have questionable
With the upgrade.
choices.
Well, some of
That's
it
why.
would be that they would have access to change their complete webpage, and we're gonna have to maintain some sort of control. So not all the committees will be able to do that, but more people will be able.
Just trying to relieve others from having to,
The uploading is not the hard part on this
Yeah.
one. You know, it takes 2 to 3 hours per hour of meeting to write minutes, and for her to squeeze that in and re-listen to the minutes to get the level of detail she does. So
So
what I'm saying is we could get them up within 5 days, but they may not be as detailed as they are now.
the question is, do we need them to be that detailed?
And that was the discussion I'm bringing forward to you guys.
Well, we have stuff on YouTube now.
So can I just make a recommendation? Having listened to a couple of minutes recordings in my time, I don't think that the level of excruciating detail is needed. I think like key decisions, high level takeaways, points of disagreement, then a concerned person might go read the minutes and be like, huh, what happened here? Could be helpful if there's a link to the recording, like at the top of the minutes, so you don't have to look and you can just get to where you want to be in the middle of the meeting and be like, oh, I'm really interested in that. But I don't think that our resources should be spent on getting like every letter of the alphabet out in the minutes.
I think one of the things we've run into in the past is when somebody who feels very passionately about something finds out that they got left out, and then they come to you and they're like, I want the minutes to say this. And so if the good thing would be if we had a policy of taking the highlights, we'd be like, we're sorry, these are the highlights, that's a diatribe, drive through. But I think we'd all have to be in agreement on it.
I'm very much in favor of going with the highlights.
I agree with John on that point, in order to meet the requirement and hopefully illuminate folks who are interested in it. And now we have the advantage of a follow-up video if they want the detail.
So I really like the quality of our current minutes and the detail. I know that there was at least one case where, with the MFAC where, you know, those were fantastic minutes. If anyone wants some, you know, light reading, there's about 60 meetings with like 8 pages of minutes each, maybe 12 pages each. And being able to refer back within those minutes was very valuable as a part of that. Is there something in the middle where we could post, you know, the first draft? Because you don't have to post your final minutes in 5 days.
No, in fact, the state is specific and says that you can't hold minutes up for approval.
That they're
that
not,
They need to be
I
posted.
want to be very clear
Yeah.
that no one is holding minutes. You
Right.
have to, we cannot be saying to the public we're holding
Yeah.
minutes. If
No,
they
they're
ask, they
ready
get them.
To be reviewed,
Right.
but I don't think you're gonna have a finished draft
Yeah.
that would be
It-
postable.
And that's okay.
Okay.
And I don't want it to, if we're gonna do that, I don't want it to say draft in little letters. It needs that big old watermark draft
Yeah.
on every single page.
I really like the quality of the minutes. I feel like in general, they come out in a timely fashion. However, there have been times where I have looked for minutes and like, so some committees had not posted them within 6 months.
Mhm.
We definitely have had that case.
Yeah, no, we'll work. on
What's your
it.
thought as to how to satisfy the need for the detail that you'd like to see?
Well, that's where it gets tough, 'cause I think what we're doing now is actually working as far as getting the detail, you know, rushing people won't work. I don't think we want to necessarily hire more staff to, you know, take minutes.
I agree.
So I don't have a good answer there, but I do think that, we're getting drafts together and available in a reasonable time frame.
I've never not been able to get something I need when I ask. I guess that's what's most important to me as somebody who gets asked for things often. If for some reason it's not up, because we don't have a lot of, Enfield is not gonna add extra positions like to cover it. So we're gonna have vacations and real things, right? So we're just gonna have to, there are sometimes people are gonna have to be patient, but if you ask, like I email usually Ed and Elisa, because one of them's gonna be around and then give me an answer. So I think that's fair.
It is important to get them up in a timely manner, but I like the detail. Because if I want to read minutes from another committee, like if I want to read the budget committee meeting minutes, I want to sort of get a sense of the discussion.
So I use the Happy Google and I do the searches on our website all the time to find things to refresh my memory. And so I'm more in Eric's camp. I like the detail. I'm fine with a draft going up, but I'm not willing to forgo because it's definitely not a transcript, right? It's not that detailed. I think not every, like I looked at the minutes for this week and this is absolutely not a criticism. I spoke in, sorry, the minutes not for this week, the ones we just approved, so March 6th. I spoke in that meeting. It's not very clear that I did. If you watch the video, I did. But what I said didn't substantively change the meeting. So I think we're already getting those highlights. I would just feel more comfortable. I mean, if people feel very strongly, they put them up as draft, but I'm not excited about foregoing. And like the town manager's report, I'm assuming that you already have yours typed. Are you sending yours largely to her or no?
I don't, she usually does them because they're not always
Verbatim,
typed in
okay.
really high quality.
No, I'm just asking like what is one thing we could do to help out, but
Yeah.
you shouldn't have to type up your own either. But do you have a question? Okay, Dave?
Hello, Tracy and I don't, always agree, to say the least, but, I think that, following the statutory, limits of 5 days is, not at all unreasonable for those of us in the public and not involved, necessarily with each meeting. But a preliminary summary or draft, makes a whole lot of sense that can be followed up, with the full minutes, that are approved at the, next meeting. Thank you.
I guess one of my questions would be, so if you have ever taken detailed minutes, which I have and I don't enjoy, when you're typing along, it's relatively fast paced. And I don't know about you, but if somebody says their name and they're like, "Whoa," and you're like, who is that dude? I write like, who is the dude in this color? And I ask somebody else. So you have, and I'm not saying you guys will do that, but I think that's a very real, like, we're humans, we're not, and if you notice, our minute takers don't interrupt us. Very, very rare. So if they have something, they're gonna get a clarification from the town manager. That may be one of the things that goes by the wayside, then are people gonna accuse us of manipulating the minutes? That makes me nervous too.
Cause no,
Well-
that's exactly what she said. She'll skip dollar amounts, she'll put question
Yeah.
marks in so she can go back and find them. So that's what you would be getting posted, which would be very unprofessional. And then I would not want to go ask them to create 2 sets of minutes. So now that we're doing,
If there is a statutory requirement, we have to meet that statutory requirement,
yes,
period.
And I've never seen us not meet it. It's that people are not able to click on the internet. And I think it's like the parking space, when you demand that you get the front row seat or oh my God, we can't walk from Hughes Park. Like the instant gratification. So I'm from the era of instant gratification and I'm the queen of it. But this is something that I realize that as humans, it's a level of service piece. So if we want to pay more for it, we just went through a town meeting where we discussed whether we could afford to pay more for things. If we feel that this is a level of service where we have to be able to click on demand, rather than have to ask.
and I want to I just want to clarify the statutory requirement.
Yeah.
The statutory requirement is that the people, the select board and people that were in the meeting are listed as being in attendance, and motions and decisions are
Mhm.
listed.
Absolutely, that's all we need.
And we
So-
meet it every time.
Those are done almost the night of the meeting. They're ready. If someone comes in and says, hey, can I see what you have on this? We can provide that within the statutory limits. And then they fill in a lot of the detail throughout the next week or so to get them ready to have that level of detail that Eric said is beneficial at times.
I think that's fair. What, I think your description is fair.
The problem would be, when do we need to get them up online when someone can click a button and read the whole minutes? And I don't think until you have the detailed ones done, that you have a professional enough product to put online, not that someone can't.
No,
come in and see
absolutely,
the
as long as we
decisions.
have the reduced version online meeting statutory requirements.
I don't think you
But
want the
it's not
reduced
online.
one.
There is no statutory requirement to have them on.
Online, they can just be on paper on the bulletin board.
They can come in and see that.
It's upon request,
I'm gonna call on
Okay.
Sealy.
but I'm suggesting it
Well,
ought to be
Can you-
beyond that.
Can you
in this
wait? I
day and
just
age.
called on Sealy.
I
Thank you, Sealy.
just want to say that I think it's critical to have the detail in those minutes. And I'm talking about planning, people's safety, budgeting is a perfect example. You really need that to go back and see, what had happened, what was said, how was it supposed to be? So really, please don't take it down to little, paragraphs, and it's so important.
I'm gonna go Dan and then I'm gonna go to you, Kurt.
Yeah, in the case of planning and zoning, they become legal documents, which is why you need the specifics. Because the court's gonna look at that. I mean, you can give them, I suspect you could give them the tape, but.
Or won't take the tape.
Right, they want to see,
They want it in writing.
they have to see the specific minutes in order to see what actually happened and. But yeah, I agree. You should be able to, I know what the statute is, but I think you should be able to post the same thing that the statute says. Bingo, it's a one pager, and then when it's a draft, when they get approved, then the new one go on.
The draft.
Yeah,
Are we asking to produce 2 sets of minutes? So that goes back to that question. Well, no, because you're saying you have a set of notes, you're gonna produce the statutory requirements, and then you're gonna produce a refined copy, right? Because it's like takes time.
And say you've got the statutory one the night of the meeting,
Sure, with question marks
The
and,
ones with the question marks and.
and that's what you post.
I think that's unprofessional.
yeah,
It's there, you can come read it and see what happened, but I don't know that I'd want it up for the world to see on our
yeah,
website.
absolutely. Makes us look tacky.
Well, I don't mean to cut it short, but this may be a longer discussion than we want to have tonight, in all fairness.
I do want to call on Kurt because I had already said I was.
I just wanna, well, Silly and Dan both said what I was going to say. As far as the land use boards, it's a legal document that may be in courts. And the court's gonna say, how did you reach this decision? And your minutes better reflect that, else it's going back to do it again. But also, as far as the website goes, when the board receives the minutes, the draft minutes to review for the next meeting, then it can be posted on the website. But there's minutes that's just not there on the website, even like months out, they never get posted, but the board received them for their review. So they were created.
And I think some of that has to do with what we've talked about, which is communicating to our boards and commissions and subcommittees that the expectation and the legal requirement is there. I'm gonna pick on conservation for a minute because they were one of the ones that was behind for
They've
whatever
met
reason.
5 times since January 5th with no notes.
No, and so I think one of the things we need to say to them is you don't get to post meetings anymore if you can't. You get to meet on this day and there are requirements. And then if the chair can't make that happen, whoever it ends up being when they reorganize. I think some of it is we have to hold feet to the fire and as an organization. Now, in our case, right, I think one of the biggest complaints is probably that committee, in terms of minutes. And it's a fair one, right? We're talking, the select board ones are typically up, barring disaster. I think we have to talk about the fact that that committee is an appointed committee and that we made a choice to appoint those people. And so if they cannot do what needs to be done to keep in line with the law, then maybe they cannot hold those positions.
Well, we fixed a lot of that.
Thank you. And I think we
But
have.
there's other committees. too.
Yeah, I don't want to single them out either. I mean, we
No, we've all had our
we
moments.
can, and Lord knows, no fault to the trustee of trust funds, but for example, they haven't posted anything since May of 2020. So there are others. The TIF committee hasn't posted anything since February of 2016.
I think there's,
So there are others
Yeah.
out there who simply haven't put anything up apparently.
Mm,
So that may be, just as
Wow.
Kate suggests, the starting point.
I heard Tiff only met once and I didn't even get invited, so.
And then I think there's a longer discussion to be had here, and I appreciate the comments for my,
I think we could be
Project.
making a chart of sorts too, right? Just a quick visual chart. So in organizations, when they're like a quality organization, when you have an expectation of mile markers, right? You have the dates, you have what's in and what form they're in and that they're final because, no one is, we're all, like I said, we're all humans. So maybe we get some kind of visual where we say, or maybe we have to put it into some kind of a particular system.
Well, and one thing we've talked about on the staff side was not all boards have a staff representative, and we've talked about delegating a staff representative for those types of purposes. Not that they have to go to every meeting,
Yeah.
but, review your committees and make sure the minutes are posted.
And we've invested heavily in technology. We have Office 365 or Microsoft 365. We could be putting in recurring reminders, right? You get this, and then 5 days later, you get a reminder that says, double check to make sure your minutes are in. And I don't care if they're already in, you get the same reminder every time. Then no one has to write the email, right? We can automate some of these things so that, Dave.
I think that a quick summary of those members attending, the decisions made is just a very quick half-page outline and for most meetings, and could easily be posted and then updated when full minutes are available and approved by the pertinent committee. And would be very helpful for those of us in the general public that may not be attending every one of those meetings.
All right. What's the pleasure of the board? Do we want to have a longer conversation on this later? Do we want to come to some kind of agreement now? Do you want to reflect on it and put it back on the next meeting?
I think it's a important point.
Mhm.
I think it's worth having staff sort of discuss solutions and see what is workable for the staff that we have. Ed and I have talked about having a staff, assigned to all committees.
Yes.
And this was one of the reasons why we were talking about it. And again, I don't think staff would be at every committee meeting, and absolutely not. There's just too much that they have to do, but then having somebody who can track these types of activities, make sure they have.
Yeah, I'm being very much against having staff
Yeah.
assigned to committees with the expectation
Right.
that they're gonna do
No,
minutes.
And that's why I want to say
Taking
that
minutes
much.
is a real
Yeah.
art.
Exactly. I want to make sure that that's not the direction we're.
Yeah, no, I
guiding
would think of it more as
No, they,
looking on the website and
Yeah.
making sure they're.
they would be
being posted.
somebody, if the committee was not able to upload them themselves, they would have a dedicated staff member to send them to make sure they were uploaded in a timely manner.
Do you want to,
We would not have something like TIF not have minutes up for 5 years.
have a conversation with your,
Yeah, we'll go back to staff and we'll bring it back.
That's what I would suggest.
okay, is everybody in agreement? That's a good path forward? Okay, thank you all for your comments on that and input. It's always helpful. We are down, unless we have any more board priorities and goals.
I've got another,
Okay,
That was
Project.
one.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you're next. I have another one, but why don't you go ahead with yours?
No, I was just reminding myself that like,
We have 4 right now, and then there was 1 project.
Another project, at some point, I'd like this board to do a review of the ordinances, policies, and regulations. For example, a couple of quick ones. One of the ordinances that we're supposed to review the investment policy at this meeting. It's very specific. It says the meeting in the spring following the annual election. We're supposed to review the investment policy. I'm not suggesting we do that tonight. It's 5 pages long. But that's one of the things to be reviewed. Also, within the group of ordinances, et cetera, to be reviewed is the noise ordinance. I believe that needs to be corrected. It was last reviewed in 1948. And it still lists political bandwagons as being acceptable.
But I love that one.
Oh, I didn't know you had one. I would bring in mind, I don't know if anybody, particularly is living on 4A, but for example, the state is close to the end of about a 6-week logging project off of 4A, which they have been starting each day at approximately 6:15, 7 days per week. This is a state bidded contractor, so it's not the state themselves, and they would have been liable to come under a noise ordinance if there was one. So I'm suggesting at the future, there's a lot of the ordinances need updating. They're just passé.
And we talked about getting onto a schedule of looking at them, looking at what we might be missing, and then also having the conversation about not restating New Hampshire state law as well. Because I've kind of just dumped some in, like, is this covered? Is it clear? At what point are we like, hey, reminder, there's a law in New Hampshire, go read it.
I hear a lot of complaints about trash can, people saying, isn't there an ordinance?
Yeah,
No,
we're
Yeah,
working on it.
For example, a fun one to read is the snow removal policy. If you read it, it actually lists employees and their routes. They're gone. So these invisible guys are running around. It also is an interesting one because would specify how much salt and sand we're supposed to be buying. It's very old.
Yeah, there's a lot of them that need to be reviewed. We
Yeah.
started some last year and got off track.
It's hard. It's a project.
and I think there's a difference between an ordinance and an administrative policy too. And I think a lot of times they've gotten lumped into the same.
They're all on the same piece of paper, unfortunately.
Yeah, ordinances will have to go to town meeting to be changed, but it's still something to review and decide if we want to bring it forward.
I think that's a very good one. Got another one?
That's it for me.
Got one, Alice?
I do. I was really disappointed at the turnout at town meeting and probably less disappointed. What you said really resonated with me. I was less concerned about the split per budget than by the number of people who were there. I was like alarmed. And just thinking like the ways that I interact with the community and the ways that I get communication, and these communication concerns are coming up over and over again. Like a bunch of people have been saying to me, asking about the way the town communicates with people. And so I'm happy to like spearhead it myself or whatever, but just like a concerted effort around voter engagement, and especially with town meeting, maybe the first thing I do is like look back at what attendance has been and maybe set a goal for next time, like 50% more or
I
something.
think Eric already has that.
Here comes the laptop.
And the dreadful secret is, we're right on track historically.
Yeah, I think I do feel like it.
Then you aren't allowed to bribe people to come to town meeting, like already asked that question.
Not even with food.
No, you
Well,
can't even
no,
bribe
maybe with
attendance.
food.
Okay.
You can, but then you don't want to compete with a lovely lineup.
Well, and with that, some will come in strategic planning, but I think there was some discussion during my evaluation that, you know, we came from a place where there was a few ways to communicate with the public
Right.
to a generation now where there's thousands of ways to communicate. And I do think that we need to talk as a select board sometime through this year about how the town is gonna communicate and then make that clear, because we can't meet everybody on the platform that they wanna be on, but we can say,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna use a number, but here's the 5 platforms that we're gonna use.
Well, and I think a lot of the modern website conventions now push to the platforms automatically so that you're not making content. I think one of the things we can be doing is, you know, if it's something that needs to be an image, images get people, right? And with 5 words, and then it pushes out to whatever. I mean, I would like to see you dance on TikTok and do interpretive dances, but I think that would get us more time meeting. But maybe Alice will do it for you.
She said she.
Yeah, no, but in all seriousness, right, like.
No
how
bad
do we-
ideas and spitballing.
Who's our target audience? How do we reach them? I'm gonna pick on Jim back there. Who maybe said maybe communications, so we could engage some people who might have some ideas in our community. And maybe make a call to say like, I will tell you, last year. I thought, I always think town meeting is important. I really wanted people to come and I got a ton of feedback about all of the conflicting priorities that people, especially parents, had. And a bunch of people told me, well, you would make time for it. And I'm here to tell you, not everybody can make time for a town meeting. I turned my child loose on the town meeting floor 2 years in a row. And she did what she did and people were gracious, but I think I personally paid for the text app last year. And anybody who wanted to sign up could sign up and they did it automatically. It was automated and as each article went up, it sent out, we're on article. So you could be like, oh, Article 13, I'm really interested. I better get my butt downtown. And and you would see through the meeting, there are people who came and went who were like, is it still open? Right? So if it was one that had to be open for X number of hours, I was like, voting started at 2:25 and ends at 3, right? So I think, that's a lot to ask, but it's something I personally did to try it. It was well received. Did not have the energy to do it this year, you guys, and I'm not saying that's what the town has to do, but that's some of how life has changed, right? Even if you could get here and vote for part of it, we could hear your voice.
Yeah.
Now, can that be used for evil? Absolutely. I didn't do it, but I'm just saying it's another can of worms we have to think about, right? So I think you should use social media and technology for good, but not everybody. The Russians agree.
So before we move on, I wanted to touch on the strategic planning a little bit.
Yeah.
We talked about it last meeting. I did call Russ Sonet today from Sojourn Partners. We had about an hour-long meeting about the process. One thing I want the select board to think about, we can either do this tonight or put it on to the next meeting to discuss a little bit deeper. But he wants to do I got him down to an hour. He said 1 to 2 hours, about an hour at a select board meeting to kind of do an introduction, to start moving forward. And then we want to schedule approximately a 6-hour retreat sometime in that May, June timeframe, I think, to really get to the meat of the project. And then there's some other meetings that he'll be doing with staff and with some stakeholders throughout town that I'll be working with him on. I think we'll go through the process there. We'll really build some documents and then talk to him about maybe doing a second retreat with the select board. Maybe late July or sometime in that August timeframe to bring it back together, make sure we're on the same page, ask a few of those difficult questions again before we finalize the report and come back. We think with all the documents we have out there, all the research we did during the master planning study, the master plan itself, and some of the strategic governance that the town did, that, we have enough moving pieces there that we can do this a little bit quicker with a little bit less consultant time than maybe moving through a full strategic planning process. So that was kind of our hope. I wanted to plan it with the select board to look for a time, probably for that first 6-hour retreat, and then we'll try to schedule a little time in a select board meeting not too far away from that to do the kickoff. And then I also wanted to just kind of charge the select board and myself as well, that as we move towards the strategic planning, to start thinking about areas that we as government leaders should be focusing on, what we should be looking at here in the town. And then, looking at some of the stuff that we put together. Again, if you haven't read it, or if you might want to reread it as we're getting closer, the master plan, the strategic planning stuff that's on the website. And then I may, and we can have a little discussion about this, but I may want to start having a few discussions before we get there about current service levels of where we're at, and thinking about maybe some service levels we should be shooting for. I think he'll get into that a little bit in his strategic planning session, but he's going to be looking more at bigger, broader goals. But, I think it'll just get our thought process going as we're moving into there. it's a little bit deeper in the weeds than I think a strategic plan would go at a select board level, but I do think just at least having those conversations of service levels and what levels of services we want to try to provide is important. My speech for tonight.
Motion to adjourn.
Bro, wait, no, sir,
No.
you can't skip public comment. It makes people have hard feelings, so, sorry, so I'd like to entertain any public comment from the folks here. Kurt?
Have, well, since he was, I mean, was just mentioning it, one of my comments was, because I feel the budget's vote at town meeting was it was anomaly for people, that many people to vote no for the warrant article budget warrant article. That, the town, as, or the select board is willing to look at the level of services that the town currently provides with the understanding that taxes are continually going to go up. They just back to nature. And expenses are going to keep going up, or cost of services are continually going to go up. That's look at what the town currently provides for services. And are we continuing to do it because we have always done it, and just historically done it this way and provided this service? Or is it a true need for the town? And I have my own personal ideas that I could throw out. It's talk to some individually at some point if you want. But I do think that, and then put it to town meeting, when you say, is the town willing to cut this service or eliminate this service? Put it to town meeting vote. And if they say yes, then go with it. And if they say no, then you could just say, well, this is what the budget's going to be. Because you don't want to cut services and you don't want to reduce the budget that way. Your taxes are going to go up and you're gonna have to pay for it. Just sort of butchered that. My other comment is the town video. I do not get cable TV. They never ran the line down my road, on my section of road. So the only way I can watch the videos is when they're posted on the town website. And there's some broken link for some reason, they're not being posted.
There were 2 meetings recently where the audio was not working, just the out audio, not the in
Yeah,
audio. So those were not posted because you wouldn't hear anything.
Yeah, okay.
But whenever I find, so I have to follow up with some of them.
Yeah.
And Rob does the others. He's been out sick,
Okay,
so.
okay, maybe that's just.
I think that there's probably 2 meetings now, including this one, to be posted.
Okay,
Is there any other public comment from folks here? Dan?
Just one, and it's maybe a coincidence, but the budget passed with about the same percentage as the buildings passed. And that may be, it may be the same people.
I mean, it may suggest an essential,
Yeah,
dare I say, divide of the town.
yeah, yeah, the percentage is pretty close.
And I think too, one of the things that having a paper ballot, because we've had budgets over the years pass on a voice vote.
Right.
I think having paper ballot, some people feel more comfortable voting now, which is their rights. And so do we embrace individual expression and encourage it? I think the answer is yes. So, and it always felt good, right, to have a unanimous yes, but that's not necessarily normal. So I think we have to be realistic about the situation and people's feelings, and I think it's okay to vote no when you don't feel comfortable. And it's okay for us to say, maybe this is the new normal. We have to do the best we can to bring forward something responsible. I don't think it's a resounding hardship. I think people, like I said, I don't recall a time that anyone ever actively campaigned against the budget in this town. And I think it's fair. They certainly are well within their rights of free speech to do so, but it's something new. So we learned, and we'll see how it goes next year, right? Is there anybody else in this area who would like to make public comments? Okay, anybody online who wishes to make a public comments? I'm gonna do my usual going once, going twice. Nobody's hand is up. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. John? No.
I move we adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second? No second to adjourn.
Second.
Ah, there you
All in favor?
go. Aye.
Good Lord, y'all, it's unanimous. Thank you for coming. I thought I was gonna have to stay.